I think that. All right. So if you just want to introduce yourself and your current job title.
So my name is Morgan Arechiga. I am the Human Resources Manager at the Fishers Event Center, specifically with Legends Global, though, so international venue management company, supporting the Fishers Event Center specifically.
Well, awesome. And then I mean, with your position, that obviously comes with having a lot of stuff to take care of. But also, it brings you to a point where you still have to make sure that you're bringing the best product to your people.
Mhm.
So, what does sports as a whole mean to you?
Sports as a whole, oh my goodness. When I was first looking for a career, obviously the first thing that came for me was sports. I grew up playing sports, played sports in college, so that was the ideal role. However, jumping into the job market is definitely difficult, especially in HR. So I actually started in healthcare and then transitioned into sports and entertainment. Being in this world means that every day is different. You're going to get a good
Yeah.
variety. Got to keep yourself on your toes. But also, it's just so rewarding to see the end result and what you can give back to not only your employees from an HR perspective,
Yeah.
but for anyone who walks into our building, giving them that moment and time where they can just come and relax and forget the stresses of their day. My team here is responsible for providing that. So it's extremely rewarding.
Do you feel like with being able to bring that to your team, it helps everything run smoother and really just benefits everyone throughout the day, not only the work, but just everyone's mood that day?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have mood boosters and things like that that we try to support. If we can, sometimes we get into the nitty gritty of the day where it's like, okay, here's my checklist of my responsibilities. And some things will go awry. Nothing is ever perfect.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that the client or the guests, whoever the event is for, they think that it's still a seamless process. So we try to keep that on the backside of things and then be able to adjust and adapt after that because that's the best way to learn and grow. But I definitely think it has a big impact on our staff when they can take a step back, breathe for a minute, and then just realize the bigger picture of what we're doing, which is just providing exceptional events.
And just not always have to be like go, go, go and just
Yeah.
kind of take everything in.
Yes, it's definitely fast paced. Most of what we do is go, 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 thinking on the fly, things like that. But there are moments where we can step back and be like, okay,
Mm.
everything went great. That was good. And then we can enjoy it for a few minutes.
Yeah. What was your first job getting into sports? Or what would you classify as the first moment you felt like you were coming into the sports world?
For me, that was this job. So before, I was still in HR specifically, but was in healthcare. Similar from an environment perspective, as far as like high growth, fast paced, all of those things. So that part was transferable for me. The big shift was the industry itself. So a lot of my policies, procedures, a lot of those things, how I typically would function,
Yeah.
were able to stay similar. Definitely not the same, but similar from a structure perspective. I just had to kind of tweak it to focus on the individual roles, responsibilities, and structure that we have here. Um, this has been my first go round though in the sports and entertainment industry, and I've been in this role and with Legends Global for about 2.5 years now.
Mhm. Well, do you feel sorry, I had a question in my head and then it dropped.
No, that's okay.
What was your first connection getting into sports? Like
Um, from like a
who
career
helped you?
perspective,
Like who helped you get into the sports world? Or who would you say like yeah, well honestly player or person, like what made you want to get into sports?
definitely a lot of my background. So growing up and being around sports was a big impact for me. This was like a dream job when this opportunity happened, especially because from a human resources perspective, there's not always an HR presence depending on how a team is structured or an organization is structured. So that opportunity was a little unique here. But yeah, that's just kind of the shift, I guess.
Yeah. And then you said that you had mentioned that working in healthcare, it
Mhm.
the transition honestly wasn't too big of a change. Do you feel
Mhm.
like that definitely helped you with where you are today?
Oh, absolutely. I think if I was in an environment that was a little bit slower or like the team I had before, if it was way, way bigger, I think if there were any major like structural shifts that would have made this transition a lot more difficult.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think that definitely made a big impact.
Well, with any of those difficulties, did you feel like honestly there was something you really wish you knew before you got into sports? Or honestly not really anything too big?
I think I was aware of a lot of what I was committing to going in, especially opening a brand new building because the Fishers Event Center wasn't even built when I had joined.
Yeah.
So I knew that it was going to be a very, very large time commitment that would stretch into what would typically be someone's personal time. And then also just longer nights on a professional front. So it was just overall, it was a large, large commitment. I think that still holds true to us now that we're operating. It's not as high volume or as time consuming as it was when we were opening the building, but I also think that varies based on which organization you're with. I do hear a lot of folks that they work 6 days a week and it's 8 a.m. to midnight a lot of times.
Yeah. Sorry, it's freezing up a little bit if you can hear me.
But it definitely depends on the industry and the teams you're with, and seasonality with our schedules. So able to get back, if you will.
Yeah. Sorry, the computer's going a little, it's freezing a bit.
It's all right.
Um, and then, well, obviously with, the schedule working in sports, your schedule's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be the same.
No, definitely not.
It definitely won't. What does some of like your full days look like when you do come into work?
Oh my goodness. So today is a good example. So I came in and a lot of it for me is kind of following up on emails. We're working on some system implementations right now. So a lot of, a lot of my role, I think of like in a project management sense, and
Yeah,
then you mix in a little bit of employees into there. So a lot of it is supporting our staff, whether it's needing additional staff from a recruiting perspective, if it's working through some onboarding pieces or disciplinary action. And then we also, like I said, have some project management side. So whether it's a new policy we're working on implementing, or if it's system related and we're trying to uplift a new system, anything to kind of make our processes more efficient.
yeah.
And then there's a fun part of my job that I get to have sometimes here and there where we're
Oh,
working on like employee morale events.
yeah,
So whether it's facilitating or supporting those events, or it's just kind of brainstorming with some of our culture crew here, any of those aspects can be implemented into my day depending on prioritization.
yeah.
I do have a small legal aspect that I support too if there are any like cases or anything like that that come up. So today has been a good variety this morning.
Well, that's
And then
good.
kind of as the week goes on, my position typically turns into more operational focus. So it's
Yeah,
hands on, boots on the ground, supporting there. Whereas like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I can typically support more from like a structure or email perspective.
yeah. Well, I mean, it does sound like you have a little bit of variety, or like it's
Mhm.
not the same thing every day.
Absolutely.
Do you feel like because of that, it's very easy to, well, not get burnout and still enjoy your job even after being there multiple years? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So as far as burnout goes, I think it's really common in the sports and entertainment industry, mainly because of the time commitment. I think anywhere you go, you're never going to have the same day twice, whether it's something new you're creating, or even if you get the same event the next year, like in our case, we've had that before,
yeah,
it's still not going to be the same day. So it adds a good variety into the mix. But
yeah.
I think having variety in your work and then experiencing burnout are two different things.
Mhm.
I think if you don't like the same mundane thing over and over, you definitely will get burnt out, but that's not something I think someone would experience in the sports and entertainment industry.
You feel like it's more the type of person as well.
Excuse me.
Oh, no, okay.
Definitely the type of person, but also just what someone looks for. Everyone has different personal goals and career goals that they want to achieve. If your personal goals, if you're in a season of life where your personal goals are heavier than your career goals, this probably isn't the industry for you. Just because it's a piece that I think you have to give up a little bit of and be okay with that. Now, there are some people who can balance it, so it's not a blanket statement. And it obviously depends on your position. There's a lot of variables that go into it. But I think that overall, it's something that you can control to an extent, but you just kind of have to know what you're getting into and be comfortable with it.
With your job, is that a bit of a geographical, like you would probably have to move to find a title of that standard?
For sure. If I wanted to stay in the industry at least.
Yeah.
And I think that really goes for any position in sports entertainment again, because it is so niche and such a small community. If you're open to relocating, I think it increases your odds greatly.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
So a big recommendation of yours would be if you are really wanting to pursue this industry to be open to relocation.
absolutely. I think that that's going to make any job easier. But again, especially in sports entertainment, just because it is such a small and niche industry as a whole, you always want to try to increase your odds for anything you do, right? So if that's something you can do to increase it, then I would highly recommend.
That's something I really want to think about now. I'm really glad you said all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. You can, if you're really like, oh, I really want to
Yeah.
work for this team or this organization, you can just keep an eye out for those openings and then really like push and trust your connections.
Mhm.
But if you're like, I just want to get my feet wet, I want exposure, I'm open to moving, then I would definitely be open to relocating if you are able to do so.
Okay. And then what would you say makes your job and what you do unique? Like, how do you feel you're unique from the rest of, well, the sports industry, anywhere, like at any level, really?
Yeah. I think having HR in general, like I said, is
Yeah.
kind of unique. I think it's usually like 50-50 at this point, so it's grown a good amount. But there are a lot of teams like our tenants that are in our building. They don't have a direct HR person. I think they have like a designee, but they don't have someone who supports their day-to-day HR functions. So I think that alone, being in that department, if you will, makes it heavily unique. But also, there are a lot of HR structures that have several different support systems that people cover different aspects of HR, and that's not the case for me. I follow the employee cycle all the way through. So from the point of someone applying into a role, I'm the one who's screening resumes all the way through potentially separating with an employee, and I see everything in between there.
Is it difficult some days having such well, I mean, a varying job, which can be good and bad, but also
Mm-hmm.
are some days easier than other, I guess, with your job and just how it goes? And I guess how do you handle that as well?
Absolutely. There are definitely days easier than others. We go through a pretty heavy, like seasonality type of schedule, if you will.
Yeah,
Especially for my role, we ramp up recruiting for any backfills or anything like that for our event positions in August.
yeah,
And then the summer is typically a little bit slower for us from an event schedule, but that's usually when I'm starting to work on any like employee morale events and like the fun side of things that we
yeah,
get to do. So I'm kind of getting into that piece, which is a little more fun now, but I love the variety in my work, but the
yeah.
responsibility of it all definitely can be a lot when we
Mhm.
end up having a bunch of employee relation issues or when things start to stack up, it starts to get a
Yeah.
little heavy when you're a one man band. So it's just kind of allocating and prioritizing your work the best you can and really relying on your managers who have people to be able to support and help you in certain pieces.
So really just taking your time, kind of making sure you're not taking everything on just on your own.
Yeah, yeah. And there's definitely a level of prioritization from what needs to be done and what can wait.
Yeah. But then, for someone who is looking for a entry level job, is there any advice you would give or any certain options you would definitely say to look out for?
The two things that I always encourage people to look out for, who are wanting to kind of just get their feet wet and get exposure, is any volunteer opportunities. Obviously, everyone likes to get paid, but part of being on volunteer opportunities is that you start building those connections already. That way, if a position does ever open up, they're like, oh, we worked with Chris back in the day. Like, he was fantastic, highly recommend. And even if it's not their position that is open, they may know someone else. So
Yeah.
the connection piece is really big, and that can be built very quickly and strongly through volunteer work. Um, a lot of it, I think we just had was like with the Final Four. There were so many
Yeah.
volunteers downtown, and opportunities for that. So if you want that, that's one piece I would recommend. The other one, and I think we might have talked about this when you were here, but is being open to the venue management side. I think people initially
Oh, yeah.
go and say, oh, I want to work for this team or this
Yeah.
team. Being on the venue management side does get you a lot of exposure to working with those teams and getting insight on that too. So it's a little bit easier, I think, to get your foot in the door because a lot of people don't know who Legends Global is, but local in the area, they probably know who Fisher's or where Fisher's Event Center is.
Yeah.
Um, we are kind of like the background dancers, so you don't see our name a lot. We do that intentionally, so that the client is front facing.
Yeah.
But if you can get your foot in the door with a venue management company or someone who does more of like the business side of things while putting a different name out front, I think that's something to look forward to because you might find some more opportunities there.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something to think about because, I mean, really, the biggest thing that I've been told and understood is that, like, your foot in the door is your foot in the door. It's
Mm-hmm.
something, it can always lead to something, more or less.
Absolutely.
What are some qualifications that you look for when you are hiring for jobs or looking for interns or any new employees?
When I'm doing my kind of recruiting process, depending on the role, obviously, I hate that word, but it's in almost everything I say, I feel like. Depending on the role, if the role has any sort of like licensure requirements, certifications,
Yeah,
that's something I look at a baseline. If someone doesn't have these things, they're disqualified because they don't have those things.
yeah,
So if you do have any like certifications or anything like that, absolutely highlight that on your resume. The other thing I look at, I would say pretty quickly, especially when we get popular roles that have hundreds of applicants, I'm looking at someone's resume for 60 seconds at most. I'm spending at most a minute on someone's resume because we manually review every single resume that comes across
oh
our
wow,
table. We don't use any AI, we don't use any scanners, anything like that. So the most compact way you can put
yeah,
your resume together is going to be the easiest to view for a recruiter, in my opinion, including numbers, any certifications you have, anything like that.
yeah,
Um, when I say numbers too, I'm thinking of like any quantitative results you can put in a resume. Like for mine, I oversee 600 employees. So that's something I would want to put as in a simple
yeah.
form on my resume. So anything you can do that to kind of signify, oh, they've done X, Y, and Z, or these are their results from things. Definitely recommend highlighting that.
Yeah.
And then it's not a major tip, but if you're interested in relocating, I would recommend leaving off where you live on your resume. Just because if someone sees that, they don't want to disinclude you automatically, thinking
Yeah.
you can't relocate on your own. That one's more of a preference than like an actual rule of thumb.
Hmm.
If someone's really qualified, I will reach out to them, but that's just something I recommend if you're looking at relocating.
That's definitely I haven't heard that one yet. I really like that. I
Yeah.
think
And
I
not everyone looks at
some
that,
of
but
that.
that's something that I see a lot too.
Yeah. But yeah, that does make a lot of sense because some people could misunderstand that as you're wanting to only work in that state or
Hmm.
just where you're from.
Yeah.
And then how do you do your management planning style? Like how do you go about when you're trying to come up with an idea or how to tackle an issue? How do you go about your brainstorming and then
Hmm.
to your planning, your evaluating and taking care of the problem?
Yeah.
How would you, yep.
I never do it alone. That's the
Yeah.
quickest and easiest answer. I maybe start my thought alone, like, okay, here's my end goal of what I want to get to. How do I get there? And if it involves other departments, other parties, things like that, then I will contact them and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Because I always like to say some of the best ideas are borrowed ones.
Mhm.
So someone else has probably done it, so you don't need to fully reinvent the wheel. If you can just kind of tweak it or make it
Yep.
your own, that's kind of a good starting point.
Mhm.
And then I mentioned I'm kind of the only HR person on site. So if I ever need to bounce ideas off of other HR folks or anything like that, I'll reach out to other people in our company, but also I have a handful of folks in my network where I'm saying, hey, if this is happening, what have you done in the past for it? And just kind of getting ideas from others.
Yeah. So just kind of well seeing what's been done in the past and either learning or copying it depending on
Mm-hmm.
how well it worked. And then so to finish oh, sorry, I had my technology is not my friend today.
That's okay.
It's fighting me. But so I do definitely have a strong passion for sports, and I do want to hopefully work in the NFL one
Mm-hmm.
day. But also, I am open to whatever because I mean, like we had talked about that day at the event center, being open to anything is a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But then, what advice could you give me or things to work on to hopefully pursue to putting on my resume or just presenting when I am about to start looking for jobs and internships.
Yeah. So the other piece I didn't mention is kind of going hand in hand with this. On your resume, if you do take any of those volunteer opportunities where it has those Final Four, championship game, or anything like that, highlighting those on your resume can also be helpful because they may know, oh, this person's already been in our building for this event, or someone's already run this sort of event. So that's a good piece for it. The other thing I would encourage you to look at is when you're starting the process, if you're getting no's and no's and no's, don't get discouraged because all it takes
Yeah.
is one yes. I know it's easier said than done because you feel like you could apply to like 500 different roles and then you finally get that one yes, and
Oh
that's all
yeah.
you need, right? So don't get discouraged on it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say is if you can't directly go to a team or the NFL in
Mm.
general, look and see who their third party partners are. We have like Andy Frayne Citywide and Laz Parking in our building as well. So again, if you couldn't work with Legends Global or the team specifically,
Mhm.
look and see what they have opening too, because then again, you're in the building, you're becoming more familiar with some of the people you'll work with potentially or anything like that. So truly just keep your options open and know that every opportunity is something you can take away from.
Yeah. So just really continue to try to get my name out there.
Yeah, build those connections.
Well, Morgan, thank you very much for helping me out with this and doing this interview today.
Of course, of course.
I had a lot of fun and you definitely gave me a lot to think about. That'll be very beneficial.
Absolutely. If you have any other questions too, feel free to either shoot me an email or whatever you need. I'm happy to help.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Alrighty. Good talking to you.
Of course. Bye bye.
Bye bye.